Many of you have mentioned the notion of a just transition. Stephen, I know you've been involved in quite an extensive process in mapping out the just transition in a number of sectors. But I still sense a bit of a disconnect between having a clear pathway in front of us. Here's the pathway for just transition in the energy sector, in the mining sector, in the petrochemical sector, and what I perceive as to be quite a slow policy response to it. What are your views? Why do we have this slow response?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's worth just quickly defining what we mean by just transition. So, we as a country and continent and the globe face a bunch of risks that result from climate change. And they're typically categorized into physical risks, so the kinds of risks Guy was talking about that are imparted on us by climate change, declining crop yields, which are estimated to be between 25 and 75% as a result of climate change in Africa alone. Those kinds of physical risks are so extreme that they're best avoided. And so then we have a thing called transition risk. What are the risks that arise from changing from the economy we have now to a potential future economy, of which there are hundreds, thousands of different scenarios of how that might play out? And we could do that transition that purely focuses on emissions. So we can use technology we have today, capital structures we have today, and you end up with a zero carbon economy in 2050 that still has the same levels of global and local inequality, poverty, and unemployment. That is not desirable. So a just transition is talking about how do we do that transition in a way that addresses the underlying triple challenge. Right. Mm-hmm. So to your more specific question, is the policy response quick enough? Nobody knows how we're going to do this. Right? We're still working it out. And that's why the global negotiations are so fraught. Mm-hmm. And into that complexity of future options, you have different views of how the world works. You've got, socialists and capitalists in the same room. You've got technology, people who believe technology will solve all of our problems and people who think it's a social solution. So these are kinds of the challenges. So you would expect a lag. Mm-hmm. The lag is too much. So if we think about today's policy response globally, just on the commitments we've made under the NDCs that have yet to be implemented, we are heading to a 3-degree world. And now just for South Africans, we warm at twice the rate of the global average. So a 3-degree world means a 6-degree South Africa. And that's horrifying. There are things that are happening at that are really scary. So we need a faster policy response globally and locally, and of course they're interconnected. Very difficult to change your South African energy policy if the global energy policy is a different thing. So these things are really connected. But yes, we need a much more accelerated policy implementation, but also to be thinking more than just about technology, mm-hmm. which is why you have things like capital market restructuring as a point of debate within COP, because unless we can restructure capital markets, there's very little chance of developing countries whose cost of capital is 4% higher than anywhere else in the world and who don't have any liquidity on their national balance sheets from financing their way out of this situation. Mm-hmm. So, short answer, it's complicated. We're moving too slowly, but there's hope.